don't get bored if you're getting better. Like
Oh,
the first 20 minutes where we do all the basic offensive stuff, ball handling, passing, catching, moving, running up and down the court. We did a 3-man weave, but we did it for perfection. When we did our weave stuff, which was mundane and monotonous, we had it was always about perfection. So there were never any drops and never any missed layups. So we started again. But my point was, don't get bored if you're getting better. Because I would say to you, Matt, hold on, Matt. When's the last time you traveled? And you'd say, Coach, I haven't traveled this year. I go, yeah, no fooling.
welcome to the Jamodi Podcast. We are all surrounded by amazing coaches and leaders. So let's get an inside look at not just what they do, but how they do what they do. After all, becoming the best versions of ourselves is Jamodi, just a matter of doing it. Today we are joined by ESPN college basketball analyst and former college coach, Fran Fraschilla. He served as head men's basketball coach at Manhattan College, St. John's University, and the University of New Mexico, leading his teams to postseason play 8 out of 9 seasons. He led Manhattan College to 2 MAAC regular season championships and 2 NCAA tournament appearances. He was also named MAAC Coach of the Year in 1995. Coach Fraschilla currently serves as a game analyst on Big Money broadcasts, covering primarily Big 12 action, and as a studio analyst for ESPN college basketball. He also covers the NBA draft, focusing mostly on foreign players. Before we hear from Coach, take a moment to subscribe to our podcast and follow us on social media at Jamodi Podcast.
All right, let's do it, man. First of
No,
all, it's great being with you, man.
well, I was going to start with that.
Yeah,
This is such an honor for me. Our paths have crossed so much over the years,
yeah,
and I think we got to go first back to New Mexico, meeting at the pit. I was a freshman. You were
yeah,
coaching there, and you guys
yeah.
kicked our tail. And then when I got to McKinney High School working for Wes Watson, your sons were at Highland Park. We got to cross
Yeah.
paths there. And then
Oh yeah.
you're also really kind and helping out with the book and endorsing it. And I don't know. I just feel like you're one of those people. Like I've always had you in my life, Coach, and it just in
Yeah.
different ways.
Well, we have the main thing we have in common, I think, is our great friendship with Coach Drew.
Yeah.
Because he's become over even back when I just got to know you, and even before he came to Baylor, obviously, and the story is well chronicled. We were moving to Dallas, back to my wife's hometown, your hometown, at the same time that Coach Drew was heading down to Waco, and I was getting into TV broadcasting, and we'd known each other. I knew Homer and Bryce and Scott from their Valpo days, and it's just been an amazing friendship for me. Also, to see him and the success he's had, and the incredible faith he has, and I say faith in his Savior, Jesus Christ, but also his faith in himself and his
Yeah.
belief that they were going to, you played there and you were there at the very beginning. And I don't even think you'd believe that he would
Coach,
have won a national title. Come on now.
when I'm sitting at that press conference, that's now it's famous. Him
Yes.
standing there
Yes.
saying that I was
Yeah.
in the front row with three other seniors, a couple scholarships, and some walk-ons. None of us stars, and he's talking about championships, and I couldn't help it in my head go, "What is this guy talking about?"
I know. I know. But that's the beauty of Coach Drew. And so we have that in common. The other thing, too, I've always said this. When we moved to Dallas, and of course, I'm a New York City guy, and I married a
Yeah,
Highland Park girl, and I ended up spending 19 years in the Park Cities. Just a great place to raise children, I can tell you. But I used to say to my wife, because she's an SMU grad, and I'd say, why does everybody love Baylor so much? All these people were sending their kids to Baylor, and I couldn't get it. I couldn't get my arms around that. Then once you start, I start doing games, and I start going to Waco often, and you start meeting the people, and now the university is just incredible.
yeah,
Just and I also think, Matt, that Coach Drew and his staff, and then other athletic teams, certainly the women's basketball program, all the Olympic sports, football. But I just think of Coach Drew and the amount of, like, he's the front porch of the house.
mm,
He's not the most important part of the house at Baylor, but he's the front porch. Oftentimes, Baylor basketball is what people see first. And when you think of him and his coaching staff and Tang and McCaslin and Paul Mills, and then the great young men that have played there. What a great representation of a great university. So anyway, you and I have Coach Drew in common.
That's right. And I love your point about Coach Drew. I think the way he supports the other sports, you can see it on social media. The
Yeah.
culture I think he has in his program really has spread throughout the university for sure.
Yeah, I think so. And I also think, the way athletics is now, we're going through a crazy time with all this football realignment.
Hmm.
Like the success basketball's had from a financial standpoint with giving and development, raising fundraising at the university and the beautiful football stadium and soon the basketball arena.
Yeah.
All those, and then all the new buildings on campus, the academic buildings.
Yeah.
So, oftentimes I think Scott is really, in fact, Scott is the poster child for how a basketball coach at a power conference school should live his life, really. By the way, I don't know if you noticed, but I'm not in Allen Fieldhouse right now. I don't want to spook you.
Well, okay, two
It's my
things there.
background.
I knew it was a background. I'm impressed. It looks really clear. Sometimes with those
Yeah,
on Zoom, the background's like got the kind of person comes in and out of the screen and like their
right,
shoulders
right.
missing for a little while. That looks really clear. Okay, so I don't have anything against Kansas, and the reason I say that is I'm cool with all the schools that we beat. My
Yeah.
freshman year, we beat them, and it was a great
Oh,
game.
yeah.
But if you would have had OU or
Yep.
Texas, then it would have been a difficult call for me because I was like 0-9 against each of those schools.
I got it. I remember that game. I think that was a big Monday game, right? Wasn't it that you beat Kansas at home
It
with
was Coach Bliss's finest hour right there.
Terry,
That was
Terry
it.
Black and
DeMarcus Minor.
Marcus Minor? Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I remember those guys, man. And of course, we saw you later in the year out in the NIT. So
Oh,
they
so
were.
funny thing with that game is DeMarcus Minor was our starting point guard, 6'5", really
Yeah,
strong, ran the show. He never came out. So I actually was recruited as a point guard, but came in more as a shooting guard,
right.
sometimes a super tiny three. But
Yeah,
he gets 2 fouls super early in that game. And coach puts me in at point.
yeah,
NIT, the pit, which is crazy.
yeah.
And you guys were pressing. I think I got a 10-second violation my first
Yeah.
possession, and I just couldn't do anything. So I appreciate the welcome to
That
yeah.
that was a little awkward, because Coach Bliss had so much success at New Mexico, and I remember being, you don't get. I mean, I got nervous before every game. I really did. We all do if you're a competitor. But when I saw the schedule and the bracket, I was like, oh man, who needs this?
Yeah.
And so anyway, but it is great catching up with you. We're living in Colorado Springs right now. This is God's country. It's
Oh,
just a beautiful, beautiful place. We just had, I guess I could share this, but Buzz Williams just came up from A&M. I convinced him he needed a break, and he and his wife came up.
that's
Buzz,
cool.
I don't know if you know, Buzz is pretty intense.
Okay, I'm at TABC Early Bird years ago, and
Yeah,
he's down there at 6 a.m. and he passes out his monthly calendar to each of
yeah,
us
yep,
with everything on it. And I'm thinking, this guy does more. Coach, you're busy. You
yeah,
do a lot. This guy
yeah,
does more with his day than
yeah.
I think anybody else.
Well, yes, I agree, and he's a great coach. First of all,
Yeah.
also, he's kind of like I can't I compare him to me. He's had way more success, but I didn't play college basketball. Buzz didn't play. He was a manager down at Navarro, and Buzz I think is one of those guys. I'm sensing because I do know him pretty well. I don't know if it's fear of failure is the right word, but I'm not going to give myself. I'm going to give myself every chance to be successful. I'm going to outwork people. I'm going to be thorough. I'm going to be organized. He's got a great relationship with his players. Everything's thought out. In other words, like he's not missing a trick, and he's always trying to get better. And honestly, Matt, I'm I just turned 65. I can't believe it. I don't feel like it.
Yeah, you don't look like it either. And you're,
No,
yeah.
no. But I learned something about. Let's get on basketball for a second. I learned something about basketball every week of my life.
Hmm.
There's a lot of people that see me on TV or know I coach and know I love helping coaches, and they might think I think I know it all, which is the furthest thing from the truth. I'm always learning something about the game and thinking, man, I wish I would have known that when I was coaching. And so Buzz is like that. He's always looking for the next thing to make himself better and make his team better. And you'd be surprised at how many coaches are in that fixed mindset where they don't really improve.
That was going to be my question is, Coach, how do you keep that growth mindset that you have? Because,
Yes.
10, my 11th year of head coaching, I don't say that to act like that's a long time, but
Yeah.
even now I could start to think, okay, I have the style of play that I do enjoy. I'm pretty
Yeah.
good. You almost get comfortable, right?
Yeah, because what happens is what you don't want to do is to use you as an example, you don't want to be a guy with 1 year of coaching experience 11 times. You know what I mean? And so now that I'm not coaching, and getting back to when I was coaching, I was always curious. Like I've loved this game since I was a kid. And I've been lucky. Honestly, Matt, I have not ever had a job. I mean,
Yeah.
23 years at as a college coach, and I was lucky. Right out of college, I was a full-time Division I coach. Got really lucky.
How
Uh,
old were you when you did that?
well, I was about to turn 22 that summer, so I actually got the job.
Golly.
I know. It's impossible nowadays.
Yeah.
It's a long story, but I was an assistant coach at the University of Rhode Island. In fact, I replaced my very good friend because I met him when I was a teenager, a guy named Billy Hahn, and Billy ended up just passed away this spring. Uh, and Billy was an assistant coach at Rhode Island. Then he went to Ohio U. I followed him out there, and then Billy started my coaching career. But my point is, like, I've been around the game for so long. I've always had this incredible curiosity for basketball. I just love the game. I love learning, and I think that's where the constant want to improve is. And when you're not coaching, the next best thing is to learn something and say, how do I pass this on? Like I'm a pick and roll nut. I studied pick and roll with the international guys, Chris Paul, Steve Nash. And so I'm not coaching anymore. So I try to pass that information on to other coaches because I don't, what good is it if I just know about it? You
Yep.
know, Other than a random clinic every now and then, this is stuff that can really be put to good use by the masses. And so between Twitter, social media, my curiosity, and there'll be a tweet going out today on pick and roll. I can tell you that. It's what I love doing. I love sharing. I love helping.
On that note, I was able to watch you do a clinic in North Texas a few years ago. It was on some pick and roll stuff. You've probably been to so many clinics, watched so many clinicians over the year. In your opinion, what makes a really good clinician?
Oh man, have you ever heard UB Brown at a clinic or seen any of the
I
videos?
never personally have.
Oh man, I got a chance because he's an East Coast guy. I used to hear UB, like maybe once a year, wherever he was speaking in New Jersey or Pennsylvania. Back in the day before we had all this incredible stuff on YouTube and and digital or whatever, we didn't have we didn't have coaching clinics online
Yeah.
or a lot of video. You could buy the video. Actually, I'm going to date myself. You could buy
That's right.
VHS tapes, right? But we would. UB Brown is the ultimate, and Rick Pitino wasn't far behind. But what made UB so good was not only his knowledge and his ability to communicate complicated things simply. Now, basketball's not complicated. We know that. But in order to, like, I always felt this way, Matt, as a coach, it doesn't matter how much I know. Oftentimes, my best players were my slowest learners. And so when I was on the court, I had to make sure that when we left practice, especially if we added something new, those guys were the guys that needed to know what I installed
Hmm.
because those are the guys that are going to have the most benefit, and we would have the most success if they understood. So Yubi has an ability to not only teach the game so well because he's so knowledgeable, but he's also an incredible, I want to say, entertainer in that he captivated you. Now he wasn't out there telling jokes, but he captivated you like a good actor would, like a De Niro or a Gene Hackman. And that's what made Yubi so good is that he captivated you. You were waiting for the next morsel of information to come out of his mouth. And I'd heard him probably 20 times. And so a lot of the stuff was the same, But every time I heard him, it was like going to if you like Bruce Springsteen, be like going to a Springsteen concert for the 20th time,
Yeah.
or somebody like that. So I think the ability to engage and capture people with your intensity and your storytelling, and you talk to people, and some people bore the heck out of you, and other people you just can't wait for the next thing that comes out of their mouth.
I was trying to think of what would be a good balance, and I think you nailed it with Hubie, is because you can go too far either direction where
Yeah,
you're working with the players on the floor and it's as if the coaches aren't there, or you've
right.
got these players but then you're really only like Bob Huggins, you're just telling stories, man. Like it's
Yeah,
just, we
yeah,
got to see him at TABC and they were funny, and there were some, but
right.
that balance between the two, I haven't been able to do it a ton over the years, but when I
Yeah,
have, I always try to think, okay, with the players, I ask them first, can I train you? Do you guys mind if I train you as if you're my players for the next 30 to 45 minutes to
right,
kind of
right.
get that relationship? And what if I could, in that time, just try to help them to get 1% better, just
Yeah,
1% better, but
sure.
then zooming out and connecting with the why behind it with these coaches. I don't know if that's the best way, but when I'm listening to people, man, I
Yeah.
love that type of interaction there.
Well, it's funny when someone tells me if I go to TABC and they say, "Hey, you got 50 minutes," I'm trying to think, how do I get as much information as I possibly can to these coaches in 50 minutes? And oftentimes I'll say to them, "Hey, listen, I'm going to be around. I'll tell you some stories later, but I need to give you as much as I know here because I'm not going to be able to give you everything I know. For example, on pick and roll,
Yeah.
that would take hours. That would, and only because I've studied it and I've learned it. So if I have 50 minutes, I'm trying to think of the best way to give the coaches. By the way, I think the other thing is to know your audience because there are some things that I'll work like if I'm doing a TABC clinic as opposed to if I'm at a round table with some NBA and high major college coaches. And no disrespect, because the high school coaching in Texas, I've seen it grow incredibly over the last 25 years. Some of the best coaches I know, my good friend Kenny Hoffpower, who coached at Highland Park. Kenny's as good a basketball coach as there is in America. He's had some health issues lately, and
Right.
I just talked to him a couple weeks ago. But my point is, there's certain things I don't want to say dumbed down at all, but there's certain things that I'll give a high school coach that I think they'll be able to teach this to their high school JV kids.
Yeah.
Whereas if I'm talking to Coach Drew and some of the Baylor coaches, Donna, Adam Flagler might be able to pick this up a little bit better or a little quicker.
Yeah.
So you also have to know your audience because certain things that you're teaching or showing the high school coaches are applicable to that level of talent. And so I think sometimes when you see a coach get out there and give you all this information, but it doesn't really fit the way you're coaching at the high school level, I don't think it's as useful. So I think another thing is to always know who your audience is and what they're trying to get out of the clinic.
The Jamodi podcast is powered by Sideline Interactive. Sideline Interactive is the leading manufacturer for high-quality, innovative scoring tables and LED video display boards that help coaches and schools bring more excitement to fans, create huge fundraising opportunities, and make their jobs easier. Visit sidelineinteractive.com to check out their amazing products.
My first question was going to be, if you could have the exact team that you want, maybe it's a college team, a pro team, or even a high school team, but these are the type of players that you love to coach and they work really well together. Let's start offensively. What would offensively be the style of play that you would choose? Because obviously the real answer is it depends on your players, but you've got the players that you love and you want. What would you choose?
Well, I had a team like this, so it's going to be easy to explain. I had a team at Manhattan College in 1995. We had 8 freshmen and sophomores. We had no idea how good we were to start the season. Honestly, it was my third year. I had been to an NIT and an NCAA already, thanks to Steve Lapis, who left me a good team behind. And year 3 was mostly my guys by now. We built on what the success we had, and I had, to give you an idea, I had New York City kids for the most part, New York and Jersey. They were mostly coached by the Catholic League high school coaches in New York and Jersey, which at that time was some of the best high school coaching in the country. And that team also had, I think 11, 9 out of the 13 came from 2-parent families. Now, these were inner city kids. When I say inner city, they were, they were minority kids. They were African American. They were New York kids, coached hard by their high school coaches, and then most of them two-parent families. So when I got them, they had a sense of discipline in their lives.
Yeah.
Okay. So that was the first thing. So I could coach them hard. Okay. Secondly, they were tough. Um, which fit me because I was a defensive minded coach. My philosophy defensively then and even now, although I would adjust, I think, was we could press with the best athletes in our league, which I think we had, or we could keep it 20 feet in and just grab you by the throat with a shot clock. And I used to love the shot clock violation. I love that,
That's
and
like a badge of honor right there.
not easy. It's not easy.
Yeah.
It's easier to contest a shot than it is to get a shot clock violation, but we
True.
contest shots too. On the offensive end, we certainly ran to get easy baskets. And then we flowed from our fast break into our secondary offense, and that was actually the Kansas offense that, Roy Williams perfected, back screen, loop inside.
Yep.
And we considered that, Matt, our half court offense from the full court. So we were trying to get the easy layup out front, the 2-on-1 or 3-on-1. But when we didn't get it, we went into our secondary break, which was really our half court offense. We were just running it from the full court. And then in the half court, we were trying to figure out ways. I don't believe you can be a motion coach and a set play coach. I think if you're one, the other one's got to be simple. So if you're all motion like Dick Bennett or Tony Bennett or Coach Knight or others, then your sets have to be simple because you're spending all the time in practice on motion. If you're a set play coach, which I was, then your motion's got to be simple. And I once asked the late, great Skip Prosser about his motion rules, and he said 2-ball reversals and drive it. So that's simple enough.
Pretty simple. Yeah.
Pretty simple. And so, I'm saying this to you because this is the lesson for coaches, young coaches. You can't be great at 50 things. You have to figure out what's important to you, and then those got to be the basis of your program. And it's not that we didn't practice presso, or we didn't have tricky out of bounds plays, but we weren't spending 90% of our practice on that. We were running into secondary, set plays, and half court man to man, and that's what we spent most of our time on. And that team was 26-5. We knocked off Oklahoma in the tournament, Kelvin's first year. And to tell you about ball coaches, right? This is a ball coach, okay? There's some coaches who give you the blow-by handshake after the game that just like they're embarrassed they lost to you, which is the truth, right? We beat Kelvin's team that particular day in the tournament, and we became very close friends because of that game, because he respected me and my team. And it wasn't like, I'm sure he was disappointed. Of course he was. I've lost NCAA games, but he appreciated me as a young coach, and we have been good friends ever since. So I don't know if that's a long-winded answer, but the moral of the whole story is don't try to be great at a lot of things. There's probably 2 or 3 things that it's important to you to be good at. And those are the things you have to spend your time on.
And I think you might have been, did you feel this way, that you were ahead of the game with the way that you thought about offense there? Because so many times I feel like people talk about offense as if it's 3 or 4 different categories. Well, in my opinion, when leather touches your fingertips, we're on offense, and we need to have concepts that there's very few breaks and stops. We're constantly playing. I love the 2 reversals and drive it. I mean, our goal is to create double gaps. And the moment there's a double gap, whether off a player movement or ball movement, we're attacking the paint. And from there, man, we score it, we spray it, we move it, and we just keep repeating that pattern. But you said it. You said we didn't want to, get the ball, walk it up, and then it just seemed to flow really well.
Well, it's funny because I've studied offense my whole life, and I will say this honestly. I can get 5 guys off the street and give me 20 minutes in shell drill, and we'll be competent defensively. Like honestly, if you get 5 kids, if you think of your 5 toughest kids you've ever coached or 5 toughest guys you ever played with, they can defend right now. You can give them some, shell stuff, rotation on the baseline. But offense, I told both of my sons who are coaching now, right? Matt and James, remember when they were
Yep.
little kids. Um, Study offense. Defense comes relatively easy, and I don't mean that it's easier. Offense is hard because it takes timing, spacing, utilizing the talent you have. There's no sense of getting an open jump shot for a kid who doesn't make a lot of shots. Understanding your personnel and creating an offense that fits either individuals and or the team at the same time. And it's why I love studying like international basketball so much because, like I always say this, Matt, we always credit David Stern and Dave Gavitt with the Dream Team, 1992, and now you got all you look at your Dallas Mavericks, right? Luka Doncic, Maxi Kleber, all the great, Jokic in Denver.
Yeah.
Well, here's what happened in the '60s. I'll give you a little history lesson here.
Yeah.
In the '60s, roughly, guys like Dean Smith, Chuck Daly, Dr. Jack Ramsey, UB Brown, they went around the world in the summer and they taught basketball. They did clinics around the world for the State Department and others. Just country federations would bring, hey, would you come to Italy and do a clinic for our Italian Coaches Association? We taught them to game. We taught them the game, okay, in all these parts of the world. If you watch basketball right now, they've taught it back to us.
Mm.
Spacing, big guys who can handle and shoot threes, pick and roll, passing, extra passes, flow. So what I love about the game is this is why I keep telling you I come constantly learning. I might know some, and maybe something I know a lot, but I don't know it all.
Right.
So that's what I'm trying to do and I love teaching offense because it's much harder to teach offense than it is to teach defense.
Coach, how did that happen? How did it go from us teaching them to them teaching us?
Well, it's not that they know more than us. It's just that the globe has shrunk. Okay. So I'm going to give you an example. We all go to the Louvre in Paris. Okay. You're part of our American coaching contingent. And then we're going to meet our European friends at the Louvre, right? So we're going to go see the Mona Lisa. And the Mona Lisa is a masterpiece, right? When we look at it, it's a masterpiece. The American coaches see the masterpiece from straight on. Like that's our perspective. It's right in front of us. The European coaches are in the room with us, but they're off to the side. They see the Mona Lisa from a different perspective. Mona Lisa is basketball. So we all have a different perspective of the masterpiece. And if you think about it, you're not young enough to remember the trapezoid lane. So the trapezoid lane, have you ever seen it on the old films?
I have, yeah.
Right? It's like a triangle, right? It's
Yep.
and down in the low post, it's really further out, right?
Yeah.
Well, it didn't make sense to post up big guys in the trapezoid lane. So those European coaches
that shaped their way
thinking.
of playing. Yeah.
Exactly. It shaped their thinking. And so what they have to do, they had to develop big guys that didn't necessarily post up, but played away from the basket. The other thing I'll tell you, and it's not an indictment of U.S. basketball because we still have the best basketball players and coaches in the world, is that they came up with the idea because they didn't have great athletes. We have to develop the skill level of every guy.
Yeah.
And, and even I don't care if you're 6 foot or 7 foot, you're going to ball handle and pass, catch, shoot, dribble. And you can tell because when you watch the NBA now, it's clear that all these international players have had a great effect on our game. And so they're not better at it. It's just they've learned from us. They've tweaked things. Now when we watch Golden State play, or we love watching Doncic and Jokic and guys like that, we're learning from them because of the way they see the game.
I want to go back to one comment you said. It just made me think of Dick DiVenzio. I went to PGC in high school. I directed for them for a few years. And
greatest book ever.
That's right. I'm going back through the book, and I highlighted a little. He just is one phrase. It was like he was just stopped what he was talking about and was talking right to coaches. He said, "Let's stop pretending that you got to spend as much time on defense as you got to spend on offense."
That's true.
And I
Well,
thought only Dick, because there's a lot of coaches that, defense wins championships. Well, then Mike Neighbors comes and says, no, it's ninth. He says it's ninth on the list, but defense efficiency, right? But I love that you said that.
Well, here's what I always thought. We emphasize defense, but we practice offense. So, like, if defense was 30% of our practice time, and let's say offense was 50, and the other 20% was whatever, game situations, we definitely emphasized defense. We were intense. Every defensive drill was at a high level, but we had to practice offense more because it was harder to get good at. Yeah, no, that's how I see the game. I see it as, we'll emphasize defense. Don't get me wrong. But we're not going to be one of those teams that we'll just outscore you, because that works too for some people. But our point was, we're going to be really good defensively, but we have to. I had great self. I have to be honest. I didn't have a lot of mentors, Matt. I had some: Gary Williams, Rick Barnes, Danny Nee. But I've always had great self-awareness. I'm blessed, and I always knew what I didn't know, and I always knew what I knew. And so what I did learn early on was, we're going to emphasize defense, but in order to be good as a team, you have to really practice offense more.
Coach, you nailed it with that self-awareness piece right there.
Yeah.
Instead of, in our practice time, instead of having offense and defense almost completely split, as if new segment, now all of our focus here. Man, after you establish your concepts, your rules, the language that you want everybody to use, how you stand, where you stand, you establish that maybe through one shell drill, and then blend those two.
Yes.
If you have assistants, great. Like I have a couple, and they're part-time, but they're awesome. But even if it's just you, have the ability or the self-awareness in the moment to zoom out. It's the same thing as hitting culture. Culture isn't just a tagline at the beginning of your practice. Culture is infused all throughout, but you have to have the self-awareness to stop, hold on. Guys, that player's on the floor. What should we all be doing right now? That has nothing to do with offense or defense or whatever you're in, but it's an important moment.
Now you've given me like 8 different directions to go. You're driving me nuts, because number one, I was a fanatic about practice.
Yeah.
Okay. My guys were trained SEALs. You ever been to SeaWorld? You go to SeaWorld, they put on a show on a random Saturday morning in October 30 years ago in Manhattan College, when it's like 38 degrees out, and coaches are coming in and practice is open. I got 8 high school coaches from New York there. At a random Saturday morning 10 a.m. practice, my players would see the coaches and go, okay. They said to themselves, not to me, we're putting on a show today. We're going to show them how hard we practice. I mean, I'm telling you that they did it because I'm going to use the word brainwash them. We did. We brainwashed them that practice was really important to us. Okay. I'm going to tell you a quick story, and then I want to remind me about Larry Brown. Okay.
Got it.
That year we had that great young team. We were 22-2 late in the season, and we played on a Monday, and we were playing on Saturday, Saturday, late in the year. Right. So we gave them off Tuesday, and I came in on Wednesday, and I said to my coaching staff, I'm going to give him another day off. We're in good shape. Kids we're playing well. We're rolling. I said, but I don't want them to think I'm happy. So we're going to go out and practice for the first 5 minutes, and then I'm going to kick them out. I'm going to come up with an excuse because I don't want them to be satisfied, right? So sure enough, and I could get volatile back in the day. Theatrically. So a guy drops a pass or something happens, and I go nuts. I blow the whistle. Stop. You guys think you're better than you are. We're 22-2. I gave you one day off. You come out here today, and so I kick him out, and I go up to my office with my coaches, and the coaches are laughing and smiling, like that was a great acting job. My manager comes up like 5 minutes later, and he said, Coach, they're practicing.
Oh, man.
I said, what are you talking about? He said, no, they're practicing. They took the practice plan. So my assistant coaches said, do we go down there? I said, no, it's not our team anymore. It's their team. They thought I got goosebumps now.
Yeah, no, that's powerful,
because that might be the single most important thing that happened in my head coaching career, over and above NCAA tournaments, beating Arizona, beating UConn, whatever, because I got them. They believed that this is why we were good. Now, so that's my practice story. I go see Larry Brown at SMU a lot when he was coaching there, right? And the beauty of Coach Brown, I always tried to figure out. Eddie Sutton was like this, and you played against Coach Sutton.
Yeah.
If you go to practice, you're kind of wondering, like, why are they so good? Like, there's nothing fancy here. It's a shell drill with a side pick and roll, right? But here's what I learned about Coach Brown and Eddie Sutton the same way. They're in a side pick and roll shell defensive drill, 4-on-4, and they're playing live. So as the ball handle comes off the screener rolls. The weak side defender rotates to get the screener. As you hit the roll man's trying to go big to big on the other side of the basket, right? Because his defender rotated over, but the weak side wing is rotating inside the big. And so now you have to skip it to the weak side, and there's a closeout. So in one simple 8 seconds or less, you've got a pick and roll coverage. You got a pick and roll offense, a short roll play. You have a big to big post opportunity. And then you have a skip to the weak side where the defense now has to long close out and you play live. That's the ultimate example of what you're talking about, if going offense and defense. And well, I always laugh. I'm going to tell you this. You ever heard this? Larry Brown is so smart. He could see all 10 guys on the court, go up and down the court twice, and he'll come back and tell this one guy what he did wrong. And I always say to people, no. That's called coaching. That's called training your eyes as a young coach to be able to see all 10. And it's not easy, but you grow as a coach when you can really train your eyes. But to your point, Matt, I totally agree. You have to practice offense at the same time you're practicing your defense, and the defense at the same time you're working on your offense. And because that's how basketball is played. It's very, very simple.
And if you don't do that, in my opinion, that's where slippage happens. Slippage happens on either side when we're working on shell, but the offensive player is just holding it above his head, not looking like he's actually reading past level 1, which is his defender, seeing levels 2 and 3 of what could be out there. So there's a danger there.
No, well, I think what happens is, especially with, say, shell drill, okay, every coach on this podcast will know what shell drill is. There's an opportunity to get very robotic, and that's not how the game is played. Now, I was a fanatic about shell drill but shell drill to me was like defensive warm up. Like we always passed, catch. I used to have guys the first 20 minutes of practice say to me, I used to say to them, because I know what they were thinking, don't get bored if you're getting better. Like the first 20 minutes where we do all the basic offensive stuff, ball handling, passing, catching, moving, running up and down the court. We did a 3-man weave, but we did it for perfection. When we did our weave stuff, which was mundane and monotonous, it was always about perfection. So there were never any drops and never any missed layups. So we started again. But my point was, don't get bored if you're getting better. Because I would say to you, Matt, hold on, Matt. When's the last time you traveled? And you'd say, Coach, I haven't traveled this year. I go, yeah, no fooling. That's why we do our UCLA footwork drill.
You're welcome.
Yeah, exactly. So then they would say to themselves, and I say, oh, by the way, Matt, every time you come off that little pin down on 3 side, that's our UCLA footwork drill every morning, every practice. So I had to always explain, as you know, and you do it, the why of the drill. So the reason, and I would say this, I'm bored too. I'm bored with the first 20 minutes. I want to start doing 5-on-5 and get into my sets, but we're not going to be good at our sets if you're not great at the first 20 minutes. And don't get bored if you're getting better, because I'm bored too. I wanted them to know, like, I'm not just doing this drill because I'm the head coach. And, this is what my high school coach taught us. I'm doing this drill because your footwork fits perfectly in the way you're going to come off a down screen, and we're going to get you open.
That's a hard balance to have, right? Because I think without realizing as coaches, and maybe there's been a push in the last decade to make sure that practice is fun. Yes. I do agree. I do believe, especially for some high school coaches and at my level where I'm at a small private school, Coach, basketball is 3rd or 4th on most of these kids' lists. Sure. I only have 1 or 2 where maybe it's at the top. And I'm okay with that, because with my past and my experiences, basketball being the most important thing,
Yeah.
dangerous. So,
Yeah.
but with that, there is this idea of, man, I want them to be excited to come to the gym. I love that idea of don't get bored if you're getting better. But then
Yeah.
I could see coaches go
Well, now,
too
hold on.
far. Go ahead.
Hold on. We're gonna have fun at practice.
Yeah.
We're gonna compete and we're gonna do some stuff. I mean, I spent a lot of time thinking about practice as a young coach. And what I knew was we never ran sprints at the end because practice was so hard that if we were out there for an hour in February, which we did, I was big on fresh legs in February. So, but everything we did was high intensity, whether it was 2.5 in the fall or 45 minutes in late February, it was going to be intense. And we didn't need to run after practice.
Yeah.
And that's the first thing. I was going to make it like challenging mentally and physically and competitive. So you were having fun as a player. You just had to understand the first 20 minutes of practice. That was going to be monotonous to you, but you had to go back and understand that this is what makes you a better player so that you can have fun in our tricky sets to get you open. So when you do get open, you're not traveling or shuffling your feet. And then, by the way, you're a good enough shooter that we're going to get you open, man. You're going to have a field day. So you had to kind of explain the why of the monotony so that the fun part of scoring, that's, we're going to still have fun. And by the way, we used to dive on the floor at the end of every practice for loose balls and save them and throw it to your teammate and a partner and dribble down the other end.
Shaka Smart. He did that in what was it, pregame with his guys. But yeah, keep going.
Yeah, but see, and we call it the hustle drill, right? And there were two parts. You bounce it, guy saves it going out of bounds, throws it to his teammate, and everybody goes down one end, back the other. So we'd be going nuts, going crazy, intense. I'm screaming, yelling, "Come on, we got to play hard!" And then when I had it just where I wanted it, I'd say, "All right, hustle drill." So now they're diving on the floor, knowing that this is the last thing we do in every practice. So like they're excited to dive on the because they know that we're circling up. By the way, if you got a high school team that has one dunker, you put him at the back of the line and the final bounce pass, he's the guy that goes up and dunks it, and then we run and circle up. Yeah, circle up. So even the end of practice was scripted because we could be going crazy for 2 hours and guys are mad at each other and they're competing. The minute I said hustle drill, it was like Pavlov's dog. It's like, practice is over. All I got to do is dive on the floor twice, actually once, and save one from going out of bounds.
Yeah.
And so, like the monotony at the beginning, the competitiveness in the middle, and then how we ended, everything is scripted so that they know, I wanted my guys to know why we were good. When I kicked them out of practice that day, they were like, we're not leaving. We're not leaving. We're going to finish this because this is what makes us good. So brainwashing.
Yeah. Well, my point too was that I think younger coaches or some just in the effort to always be having fun, you miss some of the foundational pieces, some of those mundane activities that lead to winning that they need to do. But then you nailed it. All what you have to do is explain the why. I think kids, if they understand why we're doing what we're doing and that this actually does serve a purpose, they'll do it in any area of life. What do we not want to do? We don't want to waste our time. Golly, I go to the DMV and I'm sitting there for 2 hours. This is a waste of my day. Can't stand it. So, but those things that you're talking about, I mean, we do a lot of those things with shooting habits. They're not fun drills. We call them unbroken habits lead to broken records. So that even in that phrase, we're trying to help them to see, like, you're going to do this one hand and all these things because it's going to lead to success when we play. Is this a shooting game that's fun with competition? No. But I always say, like, great players master the boring. I love what you said. Don't get bored if you're getting better. That's a great nugget.
What you just talked about with the shooting habits is explaining again. It gets back to explaining the why. And you cannot coach these modern, and I'm not saying kids have changed, but I do know that it's a lot easier to teach a young man or a young lady to do something. Like coaching is hard. Like you're getting them to be better than they even think they can be, right? Coaching is stretching their limits. And in the old days, a lot of us used to yell and scream to get that intensity up there. And Both of my boys are opposite of me, man. They are
Oh, wow.
servant leaders. Um, my son James is in the G League. Matt's back at Harvard, and I know from knowing them as people, they're not going to be yellers and screamers. Now, what we did was we yelled and screamed to try to get guys to a higher level of intensity, and I definitely would adjust that. I think you can still get on people tough without destroying their family heritage. You know what I mean? And you can still hold them accountable, but it's a lot easier to hold a young man accountable to going as hard as you need him to go to improve, as if they know you care, which is the obvious, okay, that you really care about him. And it's not just fake, it's not transactional. You've heard
Yeah.
transformational. We know that. Joe
Yeah.
Ehrman,
Yeah.
right, great stuff. But also, like, there's a reason we're doing this. This is not I'm not wasting my time with you. You'll get better if you do this. You got to trust me. You got to trust that I have your best interest at heart. And I'm always going to be honest with you about where you need to improve. But I thought everything out so that if a player came to me and said, Coach, why we do this drill? I had an exact answer. It didn't matter what it was. Because here's another thing, Matt, and you can't necessarily always do this. College coaches have more time in the off season. You're running around doing 18 things at school. But have you ever evaluated your previous season's practice plans with your staff and said, why are we doing this drill? This is a waste of time. We can spend our time doing something else that we get more out of that, drill or another drill that kind of fits. And I was always evaluating, again, self-awareness. Like, we don't need this drill. This drill it doesn't relate to the way we play anyway.
Yeah.
I was constantly trying to shape practice like an artist. Like, and here's something I had on my desk. Okay. I had a card on my desk. I swear to you, prepare practice today. Like Vince Lombardi and UB Brown were coming. Those were my two heroes. I grew up around the corner from Vince Lombardi's family in New York.
Way.
Yeah, I did. And then UB Brown's always been a coaching hero, right? If you could think about your couple of heroes and coaching heroes, and if you knew they were coming to practice that day, how organized would your practice be?
Yeah.
See what I mean?
Yeah, that's a difference. Like, you're not making a mistake or just having a throwaway drill in there.
I wouldn't want UB Brown after practice to say, hey, now come on. What is this drill? What's this drill?
Yeah.
Why are you doing that? And so I always thought about practice and like, how do we make this a perfect practice today? And how do we get the most out of the kids? And by the way, if it's February and we only have an hour and 15, let's go now. Come on. Everything's got to be quick. We already know shell. We only need to do it 8 minutes instead of 15.
Yeah.
We can get in our transition, our Kansas drill, and we don't have to do it for 10 today. We can do it for 6, but let's do it full speed. And what I would do is I would walk out on the court in late February with the practice plan as we circled up for the practice. And I'd say, Matt, what's that say? And you'd say, Coach, that's just 45 minutes. And I would say to the guys, all right, guys, I want to be out here 45. You want to be out here 90 minutes, it's on you. We get everything done today. We're out here in 45 minutes. Brainwash.
Yeah.
See what I mean? Like
QB Brown used to talk about that. Have the time going. Let the players know the time, because then instead of them having to pace themselves for an unknowable amount of time, they know how long. So, man, I can go for 5 minutes. I can go for 10. I can go for 45 really hard.
Well, it's funny you say that, because I didn't necessarily have the clock on for every drill, but if I had...
But just the 45 minutes establishes that.
Yeah, exactly. And see, what I would do, like, there would be times where you knew, like, we had a 10-minute shell section, right? And after 7 minutes, I would say, that's it. Good job, man. Let's rotate. Move on. Let's go. Let's get to the free throw line. And so, like, there were days in practice where you accomplished in 7 what we normally had set up for 10. Why waste our time? Let's move. Let's keep it going.
Yeah.
Let's end that drill on a high note, because we got accomplished what we needed. And then they saw, like, oh my God, like, we had a 2-hour practice set up today and we only went for an hour and 45.
Yeah.
And some days I would actually say to my staff, if everything goes well, we're out of here early. See? So the players knew, because I worked for some people, I will not mention names, where a 2-hour practice ended up 3.5.
Yeah, probably because of this. Probably.
Well, And I'll tell you, here's the other thing I'll tell you, honestly, and this again, I love talking to you about this because I think it can help young coaches. You have to know what the end result looks like.
Hmm.
Like you begin with the end in mind. That was a Stephen Covey phrase, a great business leader. And a lot of young coaches don't know what the end result looks like, so they never know if they're happy or not. And so they stay on something too long.
Yeah.
Whereas there's certain days I would say, this is exactly what we needed. We got it done. Let's move to the next thing. And then other days I knew, like, no, this is not good. Like, I know what great looks like in my head today. And what you're doing right now is great, not great. Okay. We need to be great. So this 10-minute shell drill is going to take 20 today because I can't let this go and let you do this without this being great. So your choice now is to give me everything you've got physically and mentally so we can move on and coach some offense. Otherwise, we're going to stay on this. And then they would get the idea that he's serious. So those days where we had 10 minutes for shell and we only went 7, they were like, oh man, that was great. And here's what I would say. Here's another quote of mine. The harder we go, the shorter the drill is. So if you want to do this drill at 85%, that's not good enough. But if we get to near 100%, we're moving on. So you give me everything you have in this drill and we will move on to what you really like. And that's, again, self-awareness.
The beauty of
Know
that,
what I want.
the beauty of that phrase too, is the fact that it turns it inward. Like, what do they want? They want to move on to something, quote unquote, more fun.
Yes.
Instead of, if you don't go hard during this time, we're just going to run.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
They just don't want to run.
Right.
So like that motivation, that extrinsic motivation to go back to your point of screaming at them.
Yeah.
Like, Coach Bliss screamed a lot and he got to the point where, all right, like I've seen this, I've heard this. It doesn't bother me. Coach Drew rarely did. So the moments that he did, it was like, what the crap? Okay. We straightened up a little bit. It was very rare. But I love the idea of, like, what if our players, they get to practice, one, they're excited to be there. Yeah. They go through a progression of flow that's so smooth and so fast that blink, it's over. We're done. That's a great practice. It doesn't happen all the time.
No, but a great practice is when after practice they're sitting around on the sideline, sitting on that scorer's table, drinking their Gatorade and joking and laughing with each other.
They don't want to leave, Coach. They want to stay. Yeah,
that's right. They don't want to leave. And when I see that, I'm really lucky now. After 20 years at ESPN, I'm no longer coaching practice. I'm watching practice, and I'm always watching for that. And I'll tell you 2 quick stories. I had a player. He now works in the NBA office. His name was Justin Phoenix. I don't mind sharing his name because we're good friends. I haven't gotten in touch with him in a couple months, and it just reminded me to. But I remember, like, I didn't recruit Justin Phoenix at Manhattan College. He was 6'9", really athletic, and he was early in his career. He was on a really good team. So his freshman year, he didn't play much. We went to the NCAA tournament, but I yelled at him every day for 2 years to play hard. He was one of those, like, kids that you looked at his face and he looked like he didn't care.
Oh, yeah.
And it drove me nuts, right? Because he didn't have the intensity that I wanted. Like, he didn't want it as much as I wanted it. So first day of his junior year, I'm yelling at him. And after practice, I had enough. I call him over, like, after practice. I said, what do I got to do to get you to play harder? He goes, stop yelling at me. And I go like this. I'm going to try that. I swear. I said, I'm going to try that.
Light bulb moment right there.
He was all conference in that last 2 years, man.
Wow.
He played in Europe for 10, and it was a great lesson. And then I had another guy on that team who, when I got to Manhattan, he had an ACL injury. So he was going to miss my whole first year as a head coach. So we got really close. He played at DeMatha High School for Coach Wooten, who was as soft-spoken as anybody. I mean, you think Coach Drew is soft-spoken. He's like Bob Knight compared to Coach Wooten, okay? So, but Ted and I got to be really close. Ted Ellis was his name, and we got to be really close the year he sat out. And he would always say, Coach, I can't wait to get out there, man. I'm gonna get into some people. I can't wait to defend. I love this defense. So the next year, he's ready to play now. And I said, listen, you're going to be my guy. I yell at. Okay. There may be some days of practice where I yell at you, but it's really yelling at the team because you and I are close now, and I know you can handle it. Like he was like my little brother, right? And he goes, Coach, I'm cool with that. I'm cool with that. So, and I would, and there'd be some practices where I go, okay, Ted, I can't believe you got these guys out here, and then one day at practice, I destroyed them. I did, right? And so after practice, we're sitting around like there's like 7 or 8 guys still out there drinking their Gatorade, and I'm sitting there on the sideline, and he comes over to me, and he leans down next to me, like sitting down on the scorer's table, and he's looking out. He's not staring at me. He's looking out to the court. He goes, "Damn, Coach, don't you think you overdid it today?" Like his way of saying, like, I'm okay with you yelling at me, but man, you went overboard today. So, like, but the point is, like, every player is different.
Mm.
You are really a master psychiatrist or psychologist every day, and you really have to figure out how to push individual buttons, and also how do you push the buttons of your team so that they really buy into what you believe. And it's an art form. It really takes
that was going to be my question, is how do you get better at that? Because some people naturally just have that. I've always been amazed by coaches that can use sarcasm in a really good way with their players to where like it never hurts and never cuts too deep. It pulls them closer. I'm not a sarcasm guy. Like I'm a sincerity guy. Yeah. I try to be like that. How do you get better at knowing that side of coaching?
Well, first of all, you have to be you. Like you can't be, Bill Self is the best at destroying a guy. Man, we brought you here. You're one of the best 10 high school players in the country, and this is how hard you're going to play. And like he'll make you feel like 2 inches tall, but then he will bring you back like nobody's business. He will build you up. I'll never forget last year at TCU. This is cool. Okay, Jalen Wilson, right, from Denton Guyer, right, who's going to play in the NBA. I'll never forget last year, and now he's on these guys. Like he's on Jalen at practice hard, right? Christian Brown, Ochai Agbaji, Frank Mason, you name it. But I'll never forget last year at the walkthrough at TCU, he goes, now listen, Wani's coming off this ball screen. They're going to trap him. We're going to hit KJ on the short roll. And KJ, you just swing it to Jalen in that other corner. Jalen, you just knock down the three. Like he didn't say, I hope you knock down the three. He just said, we're going to swing it to Jalen. Jalen, you just knock down the three. So like he makes you feel 2 inches tall. Then he makes you feel 10,000 feet tall. And my point is, to answer your question, you got to be you. You can't be who you're not, because that doesn't work. But then I think it gets back to the sincerity of relationships. It absolutely, and if I could do anything better in my coaching career, I would say be better at developing better relationships than you already have. I had some really good ones, but I wish I could go back in time, and there's probably a handful of guys I didn't reach or don't like me because they didn't get me back then. And they would have gotten me better if I was better at relationships with them, because not everybody was as intense as I was that I coached. Justin Phoenix came around because he told me to stop yelling at him, and it worked. But I wish I could go back in time and build those relationships back up, because I think for a young coach to start out in his career, you've been doing this a while now, I think they have to know you love them. They have to know you love them. They have to know that our relationship's going to stand the test of time, even when you're done here, at Faith and you leave, that I'm going to always be here for you. And that has to be real. It cannot be phony, and it can't be transactional.
Because they'll sniff that out real quick. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Coaches, the Jamodi podcast is powered by Ballogy. Manage and measure your players' skill development and increase accountability year-round utilizing the Ballogy app. Boost inter-squad competition with drills backed by the National High School Basketball Coaches Association, including a 40-shot Ballogy skills assessment. Please visit ballogy.com/teams for information on how you can provide this resource for your team. Shaka Smart asked a great question at a TABC clinic again. And for those coaches that don't know, because I've been using that term, Texas Association of Basketball Coaches in the state of Texas, it's kind of our biggest, coaches group that we have. And for those listeners and that don't know what that is, but I was listening to him at a TABC, and he asked that question. He says, does our relationship depend on your playing time?
And I thought that was a really unique way to put it back on the players to make sure that they're viewing our relationship the correct way. But then the opposite should be true is, does our relationship depend on how good you are or how well you're performing as a player? Because it can't be that way for us to them either.
You know what's crazy about that? I had some really good teams, particularly at Manhattan College. We would beat somebody by 25 points on a given night, and I'd be driving my 22-minute drive home. I was always thinking about the 10th, 11th, and 12th man and saying, should I got him more playing time tonight? You know, that used to hurt me when I would think back. I would be hurt by the fact that we won big and everybody got to play, but could I have played that 10th man more? You know, so that I was always aware of that, you know. And again, it's not easy. When you're a leader and in charge of 15 or 13 young guys, and they all want to play, and their parents all think they should be starting. And I lived it as a parent too, by the way. So I absolutely think that you got to have that, again, self-awareness to understand that you got to treat everybody fairly, as we say, differently depending on who they are, you know, as far as their playing time or whatever, but fairly enough to be able to explain, like, I really appreciate what you're doing for us. Like, I know you want to play more.
Yeah.
And in certain cases, you're not playing because it's not that you're not good enough. We just have these guys that are playing great. They're older than you or whatever, you know, but I get it. Like, you have to explain that. And they're not going to always be happy with your answers.
But it'll be in their head
Yes.
that you took the time to articulate that. I think just taking the time to acknowledge it, to your point, in the moment, they're like, oh, coach, you know what? That's good. I'm great now. No, like, that's not going to happen. But when they go home, when they have that conversation with their parents, you are depositing into their account when it seems like all we do is withdraw.
Yeah, you hope so. You really hope so. And again, it's not perfect. It's not, because there's so many external things out there, parents, friends, how come you're not playing? And I just think honesty is one of the hardest things about you. I say young coaches because I was a young coach, right? And I think this podcast can really help people just getting started, Matt, which is why I love being on today. And you finally got me. We always tried to figure out when to do this.
Coach, you're the big fish. I've been fishing for the big fish for 2 years. I finally it's hard with schedules. Yeah,
travel and everything. But you know, like, it's one of the hardest things to do as a young coach is tell the truth, tell a player what he doesn't want to hear, because we don't want them to be upset with us. You know what I mean? We want them to be happy and think that we're great, and that's just not the way life works. And so, but I think it gets back to, like, I love my time spending time with guys off the court, road trips. I'll tell you a funny story. When you're as intense as I was, and you saw me at practice, you would think this guy's a dictator. You know, he controls everything. You know, he's a madman, whatever. I was maniacal about the few things that were important to me. But there were so many things, like, for example, do you remember Def Comedy Jam on HBO with the black comedians, right? Russell Simmons and, you know, Bernie Mac and those guys, right? We had we used to watch, like, Remember the Titans and, you know, Hoosiers, right? We'd have a 3-hour road trip to Baltimore. And so we'd put the movie on and we'd stop at Outback or whatever, right?
Yeah.
You know how road trips are, right? And so one day, randomly, before we were leaving on a bus trip, one of the guys comes in and said, Coach, would you mind, we taped 3 hours of Def Comedy Jam. Could we watch that instead of a movie? What do I care? Right? I mean, that's not important to me. As long as there's no curse words and, you know what I'm saying? If it wasn't over the top,
right.
We're not going to watch a pornographic movie or something crazy. But I said, sure. So we put 3 hours of Def Comedy Jam. We were rolling in the aisles for 3 hours. I mean, everybody, coaches, managers, players, guys were screaming, laughing. Like, it was unbelievable. I was screaming, laughing. I mean, the stuff was so funny. And the point was, and then they would say to me, Coach, hey, we always stop at Outback on the way to this trip. Can we go to Applebee's? Yeah, what do I care? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
So I used to allow my team to make as many decisions that they could make that didn't affect the big picture. And like, I'll give you another example on the court. Okay. If we see a certain inbounds play during the course of a college season, by the middle of the season, we could guard it two or three ways. We could stay, we could switch, or we could pre-switch, like maybe out from the inbounder, right? There's like a guy like Matt Saman coming out to the corner who could shoot it.
Go guard that guy.
Like so I would say to the guys, we've guarded this three different ways this season. How do you want to guard this? Okay, we're going to guard it whatever way we choose to guard it. We'll guard it. They're not going to get a shot, but we could guard it. We could switch or stay. What do you? And I'd say, what do you think, Matt? And you'd look at your teammates and go, "You guys want to switch this?" And yeah, let's switch it. All right, coach, we'll switch this. And I say, okay, here's what we're going to do. Remember, we saw this against Fairfield. He's going to go here. Here's the screen. Matt, you switching out. Everybody good with that? So I allowed you to make the decision. I could have made it. But I know either way we guard is going to work if we're fundamentally sound. So even in basketball practice or in game situations, I would say to the guys, how do you want to defend this? Or what do you want to do here? What do you guys think? And then you give them like that ownership of the team. That's why when I kicked them out that day to give them a day off, they didn't know that until 25 years later, basically. But they had ownership of their team, and I didn't realize they had ownership. They knew why they were 22-2 because of what we did in practice.
I think you're nailing so many parts of just the art of coaching. It's just way more than the offense that you choose to run or the stats that you keep or the analytics that you go over with the guys. And I love that idea of giving them because they're stakeholders. Yes. In your program. And so many times I don't feel like we view players as that. It's like, we're up here, we make all the decisions, and you just do it. And have kids changed in a lot of ways from when I played or even before? I don't think so. But in one big way is the why and ownership. They've got their phones. They've been raised differently. There's less like of this kind of military-esque background with parents and do this and do that just because I tell you. So when you give them the ability to make those choices, I love what you said of things that don't matter to you that much. Like in another point, coach, is like not everything can matter to us the same amount. Right. The way we execute late in the game, man, that better matter to us. Yes. What shoes they wear, what place they go eat, what we watch. Coach, I made our teams watch Rocky IV 18 times. I never once asked them for their opinion. But what are the things, if you got those guys together, that they probably talk about and laugh about and remember the most is you letting them watch that on the trip, No
question, man. We have so many stories, and you do too, of things that happen away from the court that you look back and go, man, that was so fun. That was so cool. That was so organic. You remember when Coach Fran, I'll give you a great example. We're out at Notre Dame one year when I'm at Manhattan College. We beat Notre Dame out there. And I kicked I had a pair of loafers on, and I used to kick the floor with the shoe. And when a player turned it over, we won the game, so it was funny. But my shoe went 10 rows into the stands. I went to kick and I missed, and the shoe, a loafer flew off my foot and flew into the stands. Right, and so that's a story that these guys still tell.
Yeah.
And those kind of things. And I think the other thing too is, you have to be in charge. You do have to be in charge. You do have to have I don't want to say benevolent dictator, because even dictator is a word that has a bad connotation. But you are a leader for a reason. But I think you probably know, especially lately, Matt, my faith has strengthened through the years. And I'm a believer in servant leadership. I think servant leadership. My son James coaches he's been in the NBA and the G League, and I remember this summer, he's helping me coach USA 3-on-3. He's actually doing most of the coaching, and we have G League guys. We have good players, guys that have been in the NBA in a couple cases. Jimmer Fredette's playing for us. Okay,
wow.
And so we're in France, and I get mad at a practice. And I blow my top, and later, and he's my assistant, right? And later he goes over to me, he goes, Dad, these guys are pros. You can't yell at them. You know? You can't yell at them, you know.
How did you take that?
Well, I laugh to myself inside
Yeah.
because he has the self-awareness, and like he's the kind of guy, and he did this last year to a player. You know, the 3-on-3 world tour run, we're trying to qualify for the Olympics. It's a great half-court sport, 12-second shot clock. It's on YouTube.
Yeah.
A lot of my NBA friends are saying, send me that horn set that Serbia ran. You know, there's a lot of creative 3-on-3 things going on, and we're studying it. I'm getting better, but it's prize money. It's like being on the volleyball tour in Southern California. If you win, you make money. If you lose, you come home with no money. So we were watching film last October, and there's a missed block out. I won't tell you who it was, but the kid played at Duke. Okay, so he's been used to being yelled at, and it's a scrimmage, so it's only a scrimmage. And he says, I won't even say the guy's name. I love the kid too. He'll be in the G League, maybe NBA this year. And he says to the player, "Hey, see this missed block out right here? You just cost us 50 grand, and we got a 10-hour flight back home." You know what I mean? Like he put it in perspective. Like instead of yelling at him and going, "You got to block out here," it's
Yeah.
like, dude, you just cost us
Real consequences. Yeah.
real
Yeah.
consequence. And now we got to be on that 10-hour flight home and coach. Can't afford to put everybody in business class, and we're miserable because instead of you counting your money, splitting up 50 grand on a weekend, you just call. And again, that's the modern coaching. And like I watch young coaches. I watch a guy like Coach Drew, who rarely was just cool.
Yeah.
But these guys get their point across. And what I would say, Matt, is coaching is evolving. They are changing. The kids are changing in many ways. They still want accountability. They still want you to push them. It just becomes an art form in how you push them and get the most out of them. I'm a big we're at the top of the triangle as coaches, but when you flip it, that's servant leadership right there. They become most important, and you're down here.
Man, I love hearing that about your faith, and that's awesome. Because at our school, being a Christian school, we can talk about Christ just unapologetically, and one of our core values is humility, and part of that humility is servant leadership. And we just talk all the time. And I've got one guy, one of my seniors, name's Jax O'Neill, that golly, like you can just feel that his faith. That one, it's so real to him. It just is infused in everything that he does. But we were talking about just how Christ was the ultimate example of what servant leadership is. Yeah. Talk about a coach of a team, the 12 individuals that he had from very different backgrounds to start a movement that has changed the world from 12 people.
Yeah.
He's the ultimate coach, the ultimate servant leader, and a great example.
He's the ultimate motivator because, like, when you look at what the disciples did, and then someone like St. Paul, who, you know, I was just reading last night, they calculate that he traveled 10,000 miles during his life on earth once he was converted, right?
Yep.
And you talk about guys that are willing to, you know, we always joke, you know, we always say figuratively, well, these kids will die for that coach. Well, these early disciples literally did. They literally were so convicted that Christ was our Messiah that like when I think, and I was just reading last night, you know, St. Paul at the very end, he's writing what we think was an epistle to the Philippians, and he's in jail in Rome, and he knows the end is near, but he's got this incredible joy, you know, and gratitude, to knowing that he's going to be home with Christ soon. And he could have been miserable, you know, and like we think from reading, Acts, that he was converting Roman soldiers in the prison. Like they were kind of like wondering, like, what's up with this guy? So getting back to, you know, again, that's the ultimate leadership that Jesus displayed. And it's almost like having a coaching tree, right?
Yeah, no doubt.
You know what I mean?
That's the ultimate coaching tree. Yeah.
That's the ultimate coaching tree. So it's cool. And I would just say this to you. I used to say about my namesake, I was named for St. Francis of Assisi. I was raised Catholic. There was a great phrase attributed to him. We're not sure he actually said it. Preach everywhere, preach everywhere, if necessary, use words. And I try to live my life that way. Like, boy, Fran's a good guy, but it goes beyond that. I've learned in recent years, you can be a good guy and have people think you're a Christian, but you got to tell them too. You have to tell them, like, I'm a follower of Jesus Christ, and
Yeah.
as I get up in my years now, and I was raised Catholic, and you're married at Highland Park Pres, and you know, um, but you not only have to walk the walk, you got to talk the talk. And I think it's important. Like I've really tried to I've tried to figure out like why these early disciples were so convicted that literally St. Paul was on the road to
Yeah.
Damascus, and we know the rest is history. And so there's a lot of parallels between coaching and being a Christian,
No
and
doubt.
being a good coach too.
And I love this direction that we went because one,
Hey, by the way, let me
yeah,
just tell you,
yeah,
David Pollock has a great podcast. David Pollock, I didn't know David. We've communicated since ESPN let him go. But David just had Dabo Sweeney on.
mm,
It is an amazing coaching podcast because we know Dabo's a Christian, but it's really a great coaching podcast. He just get on there and listen. It's an hour, and you will be. David and his pastor friend, can't think of his name now. They asked 2 questions in an hour, and all Dabo did was just explain coaching, his philosophy, his faith. 2 questions. It was
nice.
unbelievable.
I
So
wrote
check
that
that
down.
out.
I will.
Check it out. Yeah.
Big question, I think, for everybody is how do you know that the Bible is a reliable source? How do you know that the disciples, what they believed is true and what we believe is true? And to me, there's two big things. One is Paul's conversion to go from persecuting to being the ultimate apostle, writing a third, almost 2/3 of the New Testament.
Yeah.
That, and then what you mentioned is the conviction of the disciples. So, like, because people say, well, suicide bombers, they believe in what they're doing too. The difference is that they're believing in something and they're dying for something that they hope is true.
Yeah.
The apostles and disciples wouldn't have died for something that they knew was false.
Yeah.
What I mean is, like, if they didn't see Christ resurrected, if Paul didn't see him on the road to Damascus and was blinded by it, if that didn't happen, then why would they endure all the things that they did? Because people will lie about stuff, no doubt, but they rarely die for a lie. But what they'll do is they will die for the truth. Peter said, how can we not talk about the things that we've seen? And so I just believe that, and I talk to our guys a lot about that because we're bombarded daily with people trying to poke holes in the Bible, its reliability. And was Jesus just a good person? Did he even exist? Was he just all of this? But to me, the biggest thing is 500 people saw Jesus resurrected. 500, not five dudes, not just Joe in his basement, and the conversion. So really fun to get to go that direction, Coach.
Well, I just say this because the two things that stick out to me is like they didn't necessarily the disciples didn't necessarily believe Paul right away because they knew that he had been a persecutor.
They had a right to be skeptical of him at the beginning.
And the other thing is, when Jesus was crucified, if it wasn't true, then somebody like Peter would have just gone about to being a fisherman.
Yeah.
And he would have just said, okay, that was fun while it lasted. And he was a smart guy, and he was a philosopher, and okay, he was a good guy, but he didn't feel that way. And neither did the rest of the disciples. And then, like you said, the 500 that saw him resurrected. So by the way, I've been trying to figure out, like last night I was reading about Paul because I wanted to know, like I've been to Saloniki, right? Thessaloniki. It's up in the northern part of Greece. And it's, the Paul's letter to the Thessalonians, right? And I've been to Rome, and I've been to a few places that I've said, how did he get to all these places and, being shipwrecked? And I learned last night that like these merchant ships would often take passengers. So if a merchant ship was going from, like, let's say, and I don't know my Middle Eastern geography, but if they were going from, say, one part of the Middle East, on the Israeli coast to Sicily, or to the, to where Rome, where Italy was. I'm Italian, obviously. These people would jump on, someone like Paul would get on a merchant ship and sail to where he was going next. And this guy went into Turkey and, all over the Middle East. And I'm like, the impact he had was amazing. I'm fascinated by him because of what he endured as a converted Christian.
To me, one of the biggest lessons was that he learned to be content. He learned the power of contentment, to be happy when he has a lot of things and to be okay when he has nothing. I mean, go back to coaching. I feel like that's a lesson we have to have, as contentment, because to be happy when everything's going well in your program, that's not special. That's pretty easy. But to feel good about the direction, to feel good about your calling when things are going really wrong in your program, that's where contentment comes in. And my story, where where things really fell apart was when my identity was wrapped up in something.
Yes.
And I think that's the danger for us even still, right?
It is. And like, I mean, but no, I mean, I like, you look at me, and I'll give you a perfect example, man. I was the hot young coach in the country. I was at St. John's rolling, and then I got fired because I interviewed at Arizona State. You don't know the story, but
no,
I was the hot young coach, Manhattan, St. John's, turned St. John's around. I had the year off, and that's how I ended up in New Mexico, because I had like 6 or 7. All my athletic director friends knew I got what everybody thinks was a raw deal. I got fired because I was disloyal at St. John's. They thought, well, we hired you from little old Manhattan College. You're in the Big East, and you're interviewing for other jobs, even though I had permission. Yes. And so I end up at New Mexico replacing Coach Bliss. I was not a good fit out there. I have some good friends out there, but I went from New York City to Albuquerque.
Different.
I was in witness protection. My mom said, "Do I need a passport?" And I said, "No, Mom, it's New Mexico." But that was just God's way of saying, look, you got a different plan for you, bro. And I didn't know what the plan was, but the plan was ultimately go back to Dallas, raise 2 boys, 2 great young sons. I've been married 35 years. I've had a second career in basketball. I probably extended my life, hopefully, expectancy, because I left coaching. And not for us. And I was a good coach. I was, Matt. I mean that. I'm not just saying that. And I wasn't a great coach, but I was a good coach. But my point is, none of that stuff matters. Like, I've had an incredible life around the game of basketball, both as a coach and now as a broadcaster. And God pointed me in a different direction and said, you know what? You've done what you did. You were good. I got some other things for you now. Be a great father, be a great husband, be a mentor to young coaches. And so there's that contentment of knowing, like, Bill Self, Tom Izzo, these are good friends of mine. Tom Crean, Shaka Smart. Could I have coached against them? Yeah, I coached. I have a winning record against. I don't know if I have a winning record, but I do not have a losing record against Boeheim and Calhoun.
Not many guys could say that,
right? But my point is, it does not matter.
Right.
I loved what I did. I loved the relationships. Now my relationships are in what I do as a broadcaster, and going around and talking to young coaches, doing clinics, giving people ask me for advice, helping them on Twitter with plays that might win a game this season, and sharing my faith. Because I could easily be bitter about the way my early part of my career ended. And I thought I was going back to coaching, obviously, after New Mexico. I had, after I left New Mexico, 20 coaching opportunities. And I said, you know what? Don't mess with Happy. You're at ESPN. You live in Dallas. Your wife's family is close by. Park Cities is a cool place, and my boys had a great experience. And so anyway, it gets back to contentment, and wouldn't change a thing. God had a plan, and I'm all on board with the plan.
And what a cool story right there, because no doubt you were a great coach and could have done it for 40 years. If you would have done it for 40 years, you would have affected a lot of lives, because like every team,
that those players, the families that they had. So obviously there would have been a lot of lives. I don't think it compares though to the amount of lives and people you've been able to affect with your current role. So to your point, well, I mean, because golly, think about it. You're doing, I would imagine, more now with more people than some of the guys. Because when you are a head coach at a college or a high school, there's a large amount of time that has to be just poured into that small group of people.
Yeah. No,
you're everywhere. And I'll tell you, I mean, one of my favorite commentators, not just because I know you, but I feel like I'm learning the game, watching the game. And that's because of you. Way different than just a play-by-play or even a former, I hate to say it, a former player sometimes that's on there. I get more from your, so Coach, just to validate what you already said, no doubt you can see a hand through everything that's happened with you.
Yeah, it's absolutely the case. And I love teaching. And so even on a broadcast, I get back to what I said about learning something new about the game every week. And when I do, and I go, I could fit that into a broadcast. Like, I can talk about that short roll. What's a short roll? We didn't know what a short roll was 25 years ago, but now when you trap a pick and roll, that big guy doesn't have a chance to run to the rim, and you can't find him. You got to kind of hit that little pocket pass play. And so, okay, now what's a short roll? So I explain it. I don't want someone to think a short roll is something that's on your dinner table at night, And so that's what I love about my role now is I love teaching the game, and I take myself not seriously. I realize this is not the most important thing going on in the world, but it's in the playground of life. And if now, I think even later on in my broadcasting career, if people can realize that I'm a Christian too, and that because I really try to kill people with kindness. I've used that phrase forever, but there's a difference between killing people with kindness and also knowing that kindness comes from your faith, and that it's not just, oh, he's a nice guy. He's someone that walks his walk because he's a believer. And I think that's important for young coaches too. I know I keep talking about young coaches, but at the end of the day, no one is going to care about how many wins. Like, I joke with my buddy Mick Cronin out at UCLA. I always say, when we die and go to heaven, St. Peter's going to say, listen, it's nice here, but it's not Westwood, okay? It's not UCLA's campus. It's nice, but at the end of the day, like, I just want to make sure that I've checked all my boxes and that everything's in order, so that when God calls me home, he says, hey, you weren't perfect. None of us are, but you were a person of faith, and you shared your faith, and you did it in a way because of this stupid little orange leather basketball that has been around my life for 50 years. So it's cool.
I think some of us can pursue winning, but to the point of where it's the only part we're pursuing is a certain amount of wins, a certain amount of whatever that comes from that. And I don't think we should never be ashamed, believer, non-believer, as a coach, as a player, never be ashamed of pursuing excellence with our team, excellence with our practice, our craft. But then I think of my high school coach. I played for the legendary Tommy Thomas at the Colony.
Oh, you sure did.
And after I graduated, we had a good team. Darren Williams and Bracy Wright were sophomores. Their next 2 years, they won a ton of games. They made it to state. And then after they left, a couple hard years there, a couple lean years that every coach knows that's going to come, it's going to happen. And he got out. And he got out to help Darren and do some different things. And now he's having an awesome life at this point. But I remembered at the time thinking that, like, Coach T, his legacy, the amount of wins, his success, that's it. But then 3 or 4 years after, in the DFW area, Dallas-Fort Worth area, it didn't matter.
Right.
Like, the wins he had, the success. But you know what does last is the fact that out of anybody in my life outside of my immediate family who calls me or texts me the most, it's him.
Yeah.
Like, that relationship that he has and that he's been able to keep with players. So to your point, I think the danger, I don't care if you keep talking about new coach, I would
I think I'm mid at 16
Yeah.
years. I think I'm mid,
Yeah.
or even
Yeah.
older coaches. What are we pursuing? Like, what are we
Yeah.
actually doing this for? While also trying to maintain a level of excellence that usually does lead to winning, right?
Yeah. And see, I always say this: 5 of the 10 best, and I might be off by one or two, but 5 of the 10 best high school 5 of the 10 best coaches I've ever been around in my life were high school coaches. I'm talking about guys that could coach the pants off of anybody in the Big Ten or Big 12, but they happen to be in New Jersey or Indiana or Texas. And when I watch coaches, I don't necessarily think of wins and losses. I think of this guy takes his material and gets the most out of it. And I know that it's a cliche to say that, but that's really coaching, because we all know that if you have great talent, you can be a lousy coach or a yeller and a screamer, and your talent is such that you can't screw them up. What I've always admired is guys who could take what they had.
Yeah.
We always say this is a Bear Bryant ism, okay? He can take yours and beat his and take his and beat yours. There's a bell curve of coaching. Like I can Bob McKillop or maybe Rick Pitino. There's only a handful of guys in college coaching that could, it wouldn't matter what talent you give them, they're going to figure out a way to win. And, that's the ultimate in coaching. The most of us are in the middle of the bell curve. And so you can't really get wrapped up too much on your wins and losses, because most of us are really the product of our talent, and who walks into your high school that given year, and again, self-awareness. You can only do what you can do the best you can do it, and be a good leader, be a good teacher, and hope that you do have enough talent that you can have success. But I've watched coaches who finish 500 and say that guy's a great coach. And Joe Scott at Air Force Academy. I'm out here, in Colorado Springs. That guy's a great coach. He's running the Princeton stuff better than anybody. And I've talked to him a million times. I know he's a great coach. I think they finished like a couple games over 500 last year, maybe 16 and 14. I'm just guessing. They're hard to play against. They hate playing against him in the Mountain West. But he's also got academy guys. He's got, he's got a lot of Dallas kids, by the way, because of, the military thing. And Texas is a great place for the academies,
Yeah.
But my point is, like, he's a great coach. It doesn't matter what his record is. And there's other guys. Bill Self's a great coach, and he's going to win national championships. He's a great coach. I don't care what talent you give him; he's going to win. But if you're wrapped up in your record and the glory of coaching and winning titles, it's going to be very short-sighted in the end, Matt. It really will be. I can tell you that firsthand, because I haven't thought a second about what my coaching record was in 9 years. I do know I went to 8 postseasons in 9 years. And that's when people say, how come you're not coaching? How come you stopped coaching? You know what? It was just a calling. It was like, hey, I gave you a chance. The good Lord said, I gave you a chance to be a head coach, and you were good at it. Now I want you to do this other stuff.
Yeah.
And then, my friends who can't give up coaching, I can't speak for them, but I know I could do it easily and look back on it and say, I love what I did. Now I'm still in basketball, and I'm able to impact people here with broadcasting.
I love the idea of trying to measure success of a season beyond wins and losses. And I wrote down this word while kind of where you were talking about it's potential.
Yes.
Potential. It's a horrible word, except if you meet it or you exceed it, then it's great.
Well, it's like culture. Culture is a neutral term. Okay. It's not, culture doesn't mean it's good culture or bad culture. Every team has culture. I walk into a gym. Here's a good one for you. I say this all the time at clinics. I ought to be able to walk into your gym at any 10 minutes of practice, beginning with your warm-ups. Remember, don't get bored if you're getting better, middle or end, and know what the culture of your program is. So when I say culture, we say potential. Potential is a neutral word. Doesn't mean that you reached it or didn't reach it. It just means, ultimately the potential to me is, did we get the very most out of our team in that given season? And individually, did we get the very most out of each young man or young lady on the team? And that's meeting your potential or exceeding it sometimes. Sometimes potential is exceeded because your culture is so good that your players are so close that they take each other up beyond what we all thought could happen.
Mm-hmm.
That when you have that happen in a given year, which doesn't happen often, it's that special season where everything just clicked. But yeah, I mean, you can only do the best you have with the material you have. And that's how I judge coaches, because I know it's beyond winning and losing.
Coach, I love to play a little game. These other coaches don't know that I'm playing this game in my head, but when I go to a clinic, and again, TABC is just the biggest one down here, but when I go and I see guys that I either have a close relationship with or barely one, but as coaches, when you step foot in that fraternity, whether you stay in it or step out, whatever, you're in it, and you're always in it. And so I always ask them, how was your year? Coach, I just can tell so much from the response.
I know.
Well, we just, golly, guys just didn't do the. Okay, got it. I understand what you're basing this on. I feel like with some certain confidence that no matter what year I had, when somebody asked me if I feel like with culture, with expectations, with managing players, with being process based, Coach, I can answer that question almost the same way every time, which is, man, first of all, love coaching these guys. We had such a special gym. They cared about each other, and they played really hard.
Yeah.
That to me has nothing to do with, man, we made it to the regional finals. Man, we won 2 games this year. Because, like your point, Tom Inman. Do you know who Tom Inman is, Coach?
Yeah.
Plano Senior High.
Yeah. I'm out of Dallas for a few years now.
Oh no, but he's here somewhere, and wherever he is right now,
John Roberson.
He's talking. That's right. He's talking to people.
Is still playing. John is he
really?
Playing. He's like 30 something, still high level Euro player.
Oh wow,
yeah,
good for him. Those guys that keep that going and make that.
Let me just tell you what you just said.
Yeah,
what you just said about your team had nothing to do with wins and losses.
Yeah.
You were pleased. Now, if you had enough talent, you won your 20. You went 20-5 and lost in the district final. If you didn't have enough talent, the same things were true about the togetherness, and they worked hard, and you were 15-11 because you didn't have quite the talent you had maybe in another year.
Yeah.
To me, that's coaching. Like, I don't need to know what your win-loss record was. Now, if I can tell that your team's not well coached, I can probably see it for myself, but I'm not going to judge you on your record just because of your record. It's going to be what I see on the court in games and in practice. And, that takes the self-awareness of a coach to say, I know I did a good job with these kids because we got maybe the record didn't indicate this was as good a season as last year, but man, we had more talent last year, but we got closer to our potential this year than we did last year. Got to know that intrinsically. It's got to, and if you don't, it gets back to what I said earlier. If you don't know what the end result looks like, Matt, you can't really answer that question for yourself. A good coach knows what the end result looks like at the end of a season, end of a practice, end of a game. Obviously, the scoreboard tells you whether the result was good externally. But yourself at the end of a year, man, you know what? We got a lot out of these guys. We couldn't ask anymore. They gave us everything they did in practice that we asked them. They competed in games, and we were in a district that was hard.
Yeah.
Come on. I mean, what are we talking about here?
So Coach Inman, we're down in Austin at one of the state tournaments, and I see him out, and this was years ago when I was still at McKinney with Wes, and I said, Coach, man, you won state a few years ago. I was just so enamored with that. Like, in UIL down here, it's 7 rounds to do it. 7 in TAPS where I am. It's only 5. Like, I got a way better shot, Coach. If I can get in, I got a shot. But it's such a beating, 7 games. And I said, how'd you do that, Coach? He goes, man, at the end of the day, we're just jockeys. The best horses win. Yeah. And it didn't really sink in at that moment because a good jockey can take a bad horse and make it better.
Yeah.
A good jockey with great horses, man, they can do that. But then to his point too, and you've said it a bunch, we all know there is a little bit of magic that has to happen
for it really to work out the way that you all want, which is you got to have the talent. It's got to be the right plan for that talent. Obviously, coaches have to manage that talent the right way, because there's a lot of there's coaches around, or teams around here with a lot of talent that if the plan doesn't work and the culture's not the way you want, and then there's this other thing that is out there, that injuries. Golly, how many times, how many seasons do you think like we've got the pieces? In my head, I'm thinking we've got the pieces. The plan works with these guys, and then 2 or 3 pieces throughout the year go down. And then so when you look back over it, and I have this grandparent that we always go eat after the season, and he flat out asked me, he's like, Coach, what happened? How come it didn't happen? And I was almost taken aback, like, do you really not know?
Yeah.
Like, I'm convinced. I don't think parents don't know. People don't know that you can't lose top 1, 2, and 3 for extended periods of time and just think next man up, especially at the high school level, but even the college level.
You know what's never talked about in coaching, and when people criticize coaches, and they never talk about fate and luck. Okay, it's never brought up. It's always your team was good. Yeah, you had some injuries, but you either won or you lost, or you overachieved a little bit. And it's unfortunate you had some guys hurt. But fate and luck are a big part of success. And sometimes, I'm going to say it, sometimes an average coach is in the right place at the right time, and sometimes a great coach is in the wrong place at the wrong time because of injuries or whatever. Or, let's face it, we're all human beings. Like a bad call in a district game. You know what I mean? You're in TAPS playoffs, and referees are human. They miss a call. It cost you the game. They misinterpreted a rule or didn't see a foul call late in the game. It happens every season, all the time, every week, every night. And that one game, I'll never forget. I can't remember who it was, but NFL coach. They're 7-8. He's on the hot seat, and the word is if they don't finish 500, he's going to get fired. And I think they were playing the Jets, because I'm a Jets fan, and they're down on the goal line. They're driving late, and they're about to take the lead. And this guy's going to finish 8-8, and his guy fumbles on the 2-yard line, and he gets fired. And maybe the next year everything goes well, and they're 13-3, and they go to the Super Bowl. We'll never know that because of one play. And that one play oftentimes will characterize a coach's career. And I don't think that's fair, because that's why I say fate and luck intervene more than people know. Is Bill Self a great coach? Yes, he is. Does every now and then Bill Self get lucky and something happens and you go, freaking Bill Self.
With better players, do you seem to get luckier more than
you do. And again, like that's why I don't ever judge, and I'll tell you this really quick story, but there were 3 high school students in the 60s in Seattle. And there was this new thing. It was a monstrosity, but it was called a computer. And this one high school in suburban Seattle it was the only high school in the country that had a computer. And the computers were new. And there were 3 students at the high school that morning, noon, and night, spring, summer, fall, winter, whenever they weren't in class, they were on the computer. One of them, and they were all best friends. One of them was a hiker, and he went on a trip with his family, and I can't remember his name now, and I'm so sorry about that. But he was tragically killed in a hiking accident. And there were only like 20 hiking deaths a year in the United States at that time, whatever. Well, he was no longer around, tragically. The other 2 guys happened to be Paul Allen and Bill Gates. And the rest is history. And fate intervenes. And again, if it's God's will, then it's God's will. But that's why, in sports, luck is part of the equation. It's not just how good a coach you are, how poor a coach. Sometimes things happen that are out of your control, and you're measured by it.
Coaches, the Jamodi podcast is powered by Shoot 360. The future of basketball has arrived in Dallas-Fort Worth. Shoot 360 combines the latest sports technology with the fundamentals of basketball skill development. The result is a one-of-a-kind video game-like basketball program designed to improve your shooting, dribbling, and passing. Visit shoot360dfw.com to learn more and register for your free 1-hour workout evaluation. Shoot 360, the future of basketball is here. We've had so many great words floating around: contentment, And the one I just thought of while you were giving that story is perspective.
Yes. Yes.
One, I think I was really struggling, coach, 4 or 5 years ago, honestly, to the point of wondering, like, I'm still relatively young. I could pivot and I could do something different. But then, man, like you, I've had basketball in my life and been in love with it since I was 9. Hopefully now it's a healthier love than it used to be. Not less of an obsession, more of I just really enjoy it, right? But thought about that. And I think first you got to accept the fact that all of the unfairness, the luck, and everything that you talked about, that's what we signed up for. So like I was getting upset for things that I just needed to understand and accept the fact that this is a part of the job. You're going to disappoint people. Oh man, I had a coach's talk with the OBU coach. It was really good. Oklahoma Baptist, really good. He was talking about the pain, Coach Aker, the pain of coaching. We don't talk about that very much. We talk about all the things we want to achieve and how to get there, the X's and O's, but then the pain behind it. But perspective, coach, you're never as great as you think you are. You're never as bad as you think you are. And we have to remember that in the good times and in those lean years.
I'm the perfect example because I was the hot young coach. I was one of those guys at the end of the NCAA tournament. When we beat Oklahoma, I was the same coach that we had that great season I told you about. I was the same coach before we beat Oklahoma as I was after we beat them. And then, but when we were lucky enough to knock off Oklahoma as a 13th seed, all of a sudden I became the hot young coach. And then I went from the hot young coach to 3 years later, turning St. John's around and then getting fired that spring, ostensibly because I looked at another job. They would say otherwise.
Which that wouldn't happen today. I mean, like I feel like people are always looking, always throwing their hats in.
I had it in my contract.
Nuts.
I didn't break my contract. I had permission, but the Catholic priest at the school, St. John's, saw it differently. But here's my point: I could have been devastated, and I was, because I was thinking about my family. My kids were little. How am I going to support my family? And luckily, I went back into coaching at New Mexico, and then I went to TV. But my point was, there's not an ounce of bitterness in my life over that. I mean, I could have 800 wins right now. I could be coaching at Ohio State or Notre Dame, a couple of my dream schools, and already, be one of the giants of the business. I have never for a second been bitter about how that unfolded because I felt it was part of God's plan. But that's perspective, because the perspective is, I hate to say it this way, but it's in the word. We're vapor. We're a vapor. We're a freaking vapor. I can't, I'm not going to use curse words. Can I say freaking? I don't know if I can.
Oh, freaking's not a cuss word. Yeah.
But we're a vapor.
It would invalidate a lot of the good stuff we talked about if you dropped an F-bomb on there right there.
Oh man, I know.
But
I did in the past. In the past, man.
I'm not saying that if you cuss, you're not a believer. That's not what I mean.
I did in the past, and I try really hard to keep that in my vocabulary. But my point is, we're a vapor, man. We're only here for a short period of time. A day is 1,000 years. 1,000 years is a day. And so my perspective is, I don't want to leave. I mean, I know there's eternal glory, but I want to be around my kids as long as I can.
Yeah.
I want to watch basketball. I want to broadcast. I want to stay healthy. I'm going on a 5-mile walk again today, like I do every morning.
Let's go.
But the perspective is, I've been blessed to have cool things happen to me. And I sit courtside at Allen Fieldhouse. And so that's a great gig, but I'm not jealous of Bill Self or Tom Izzo, my close friend, because that's not what the Lord had planned for me. I don't mean to, I know you don't mind me bringing it back to my faith, but
no, it's good.
I think perspective in coaching is critical because you are the jockey. And if there are times, I don't care how good a jockey you are, if your horse can't get you to win, place, or show, it doesn't mean you're a bad jockey. And so that's the thing I have as a broadcaster. I get to point out great coaching, great plays, great players. Hey, this kid averages 4 points a game. I'm just telling you, he is so important to the success of Baylor right now. You have no idea what he means to this team, both on the court and in the locker room. The average fan will say, okay, explain that to me. And I can explain it. Like when John, Everyday John, our guy, Everyday John.
I love that. Yeah.
He before the injury, and hopefully we see him back. he runs so hard that even when he doesn't get the ball, he opens up the court for his teammates. If you think about those great guards, right? And like he's not getting the ball, but it doesn't matter. He's going to run hard.
He runs for his
Everyone,
teammates, no
he
doubt.
runs for his teammates, and we call him the unknown runner because he runs never knowing whether he's going to get it or not. I'll point something like that on TV, and people will go, "I can't believe I heard what you said about Jonathan." He doesn't want me to call him JTT. Okay, it's Jonathan Chamachachua. Okay, because he loves his name.
Yeah.
Okay, there it is. But I'll point out that John runs the floor so hard because he runs for his teammates. And that's basketball.
Yeah.
And he did not get in the ball on that play, but that's the reason Adam Flagler hits a three in transition. And so those are the things I love about the game.
And in full circle, the art of coaching is, I think we zoom out and we don't just celebrate the player that hit the shot. We celebrate the guy that ran, that engaged a defender, that opened the gap, that allowed a playmaker to deliver. Like that to me is the art of it, where we can validate the little things that others are doing that's leading to team success.
That's coaching. See, that's the ultimate in coaching, because you know the reason we love basketball so much, it's such a great team. You know, we say football, great team sport. It is. Basketball's similar. I know you're making that face too, but it is.
I think it is great. I think we're the ultimate because the same group of five affects both ends. And in any moment, one guy can just turn a possession around. You can't say that for the other sport, as amazing as it is.
It is. I agree.
Sorry, Coach.
We love college football. I love college football.
Texas coaches just flip this off, just turn it on. How dare you? No.
I know. But the truth is, like, that's what we love about sports is there's things that make a team great that go beyond stats.
Yeah.
And getting back to those players, we started this way back early in this podcast about like me being unhappy with myself about my 9th, 10th, and 11th man. It gets back to celebrating things that contribute to winning on a particular player that don't necessarily show up in a stat sheet. Like, I'll give you a great example. I was one of the first to do this, and I didn't invent anything in basketball. But when we watched the film, when you got credit, you as a player, like if you passed it to a teammate and they got an open shot, you got let's call it a Jasper assist, Manhattan Jaspers. Okay. So you might have only played 16 minutes that night, Matt, and you had 2 assists on the stat sheet, but you made a pass to a teammate who got fouled on a drive and a 2-shot foul. You got a Jasper assist. You got an assist when you threw it to a guy who got an open shot and he missed it. You got a Jasper assist. So when we would watch the film, I'd say, hey, credit to Matt Saman. He had 2 assists, but he had 11. Or he had 11 would be a lot in 16 minutes. Yeah. He had 7 Jasper assists. Okay.
Yeah.
Great job, Matt, of moving the ball. These guys will make those shots. And I would reward offensive rebounds attempted. Obviously deflections.
Yeah.
Right? You know, we all know about deflections. And I explain on TV why a deflection is important. You might deflect the ball out of bounds and they still have possession, but there's only 7 in a college game. There's only 7 on a shot clock. So and deflections are a great it's a great way to measure hustle and intensity on defense.
Yeah.
So like I was always big on constantly rewarding things that were important to us winning that didn't show up on a stat sheet. And that's the beauty of this game that we love so much, is that you point those things out. And by the way, when you point those things out, your relationship with the player grows because hey, Coach Fran appreciates me for my Jasper assists. He's telling me that right now I'm the backup point guard, but that he values my contribution. And there's nothing better than being in that film room after a game and saying, hey, Matt, great job right here, man. Everybody watch this. Let's run that back. Run it back again. Run it back again. See, this is basketball right here. See what Matt Saman just did? This is why we win. And I'm telling you, man, I'm getting goosebumps because you might sound like I was a, what's the word? Brainwasher, but I was. I brainwashed you into believing what was critical to us winning. And I meant it from the bottom of my heart. That's coaching.
Before I get you off though, I do want to do the speed round. These are quick
Go,
questions.
go.
First thing that pops in your head. Ready?
Oh boy, I'm nervous. Go ahead.
Well, people know you, but now we're really going to know you.
Yeah.
Favorite ice cream flavor?
Peppermint. Brahms. Peppermint.
Nice. Greatest shooter of all time?
Steph. No question. Steph. Impossible to be anybody better.
Yeah. Best basketball movie of all time?
Oh, there's so many. I'd have to say Hoosiers. I mean, I could watch a bunch of them, and they're all good. An underrated one was the one with Robbie Benson. Oh, this is way before you were born.
The save the what is it?
They filmed it at Colorado State.
Yeah, a lot of coaches have said that.
Yeah, I can't. Oh, that was a good one. I was mid-70s. I was high school, college, but I'd have to say Hoosiers.
Yeah.
Gene Hackman was fabulous as a coach. Fabulous, man.
Believable. Like I believed him as a coach.
And
yeah.
my favorite part when he says, "My guys are on the court when they were
That's
playing
right.
with four. When they were playing with four."
Now, truth is, scheme wise and practice wise, I disagree with a lot. My practices are not meant for your enjoyment. Well, okay, like let's
but that's partly true.
No doubt, no doubt,
yeah,
no doubt.
Go ahead, keep going.
Texting or talking?
Oh, talking, man. I'm a texter, but talking's a lost art.
All right, you know where I live. For high school, shot clock or no shot clock?
Oh, come on now. Absolutely shot clock. It makes the game better.
Yeah.
Good coaches will figure out a way to be good.
Player development,
quick decision making in a shot clock. And all 5 players on your floor have to have quick decision making. Your skill level will improve. Now, coaching will improve because you have to, because in order to get good shots, I always say it this way. Bob McKillop, who's a good friend of mine, great coach, you give him a 10-second shot clock, 30-second shot clock, it doesn't matter. His team will get good shots.
Yeah.
And I think that's where coaches are afraid of it. The least talented team doesn't always win without a shot clock. I'd say the better coach team will be more successful with the shot clock, whether they have the better talent or not.
I feel like you just said that the other day or tweeted that. Yeah, because I read that. And
yeah. we got World Cup going on, and
yeah.
Around the world outside of the U.S., FIBA rules are 24-second clock starting at the age of 14. Think about that.
That was going to be my question too.
Yeah.
Do you think college, high school, all
teach them how to play?
What about the college game should change besides maybe the shot clock? Should we go to quarters?
I like 4 quarters because what happens is you don't have a free throw parade in the last 10 minutes of the first half. You reset the team fouls.
Yeah.
And so now you got more basketball, less free throw shooting. And I know not 99% of the world, including women NCAA, plays with 4 quarters. I don't see why. Oh, we have to be different. I say no. Let's go 4 quarters, and I like it. The main reason is less free throws because you reset the team fouls at the end of the first quarter.
What do you think about high school basketball going to the 5 fouls and resetting every corner like we did? I'm excited about it this year.
I didn't know about that, but that's outstanding. That's perfect. Yep. That's how it should be. I like
5 fouls, no 1-and-1s. You just go straight to bonus.
I didn't know that. Is that Texas rule or
no? NFHS.
I love it. Yeah. I think that's great, and you'll have a lot of you'll have more playing in less free throws.
It definitely will affect. I love it for the first 3 quarters. It'll affect the last quarter. It'll affect the last 2 minutes because if you don't have the ability, like at 6 fouls, okay, we can get them in the bonus, the 1-and-1. You're getting them 2 cracks at it. But on the flip side, too, there's a lot of time in those 2 free throws for organization and things. So I think it's going to be fun.
I think it'll be good. I like that. I'm glad you told me that.
Favorite holiday?
Christmas. Love Christmas, man. Basketball coaches love Christmas. When you're coaching and your last game's on the 21st, right? And you're in high school, you tell your kids, hey, we're going to practice on the 26th.
Yeah.
You guys get home with your family. Same thing with college. But I go back to my youth and Christmas holiday. There is nothing better than Christmas, and obviously celebrating the birth of Jesus. But not as importantly, but opening up presents and being around family, and mom baking turkey or whatever, and whatever it is, just being around family, and especially when family comes from all over the country. Like we have 2 boys now, and last year we saw one in Boston, and then we flew to Grand Rapids after Christmas to see the other. I miss Christmas morning with two little ones.
Hmm. Okay, you're up 3 on defense with 7 seconds left. Do you foul or no foul?
We used to never foul. We're
Yeah,
fouling now. But most importantly, Matt, we're practicing that a lot.
that's it. Whatever you
Practicing hard.
choose. Yeah,
Whatever you choose will work most of the time. Sometimes you're up 3 and a guy throws up you try to foul him and you can't foul him and they hit a shot, or either way it's gone back and forth. I think it's safer to foul, but you have to practice how to foul, who to foul, and where to foul.
because the
And
most
when.
dangerous thing is to be in that moment and guess or hope that you
No.
guys figure it out.
And by the way, I'll give you a little nugget. As you're coming up the floor with me, I'm reaching to your outside shoulder to foul you. I can foul you on the inside, but as you're coming up at midcourt, I'm going to reach through and foul you. I'm not going to grab
yeah,
you, but I'm going to reach through to foul you to make sure the referee sees contact and
yeah,
knows it's just a foul. I'm not grabbing you with two hands. I'm just
yep.
reaching. But we're going to work on that, and then we're going to talk about it with my staff before the season. Hey, scenarios. What do you want to do here? What do you want? So, got to practice that.
2 more.
Yeah.
And what book would you give someone besides the Bible?
Oh man, I knew you were going to ask me that. I've been.
You can always pass.
I used to be a great reader of books until my eyesight. Now I'm wearing glasses right now. It's only reading glasses, no big deal.
Yeah.
Man, I remember reading Foul Ball when I was a kid, but you don't want to read that. That was the inside of baseball. I notice I'm going to say stuff had a huge impact on my coaching.
Yeah.
But let's throw a shout out. I've read so many books that I love, and I can't remember right now. But Dick DeVenzio's book Stuff, for those who are listening, Dick played at Duke, was a very good player, not a great player, very good. And he wrote a book called Stuff. He opened up these PGC Point Guard Academy camps. Matt went to one, but that was a great basketball book. Why? Because there was so much common sense basketball that you never get taught.
That's right.
That was in the book that you go, yeah.
To me, it's a coaching manual. You're starting out, or even halfway through it, and you want to line up what you do versus stuff that just makes sense. That's it.
Common sense basketball.
Last one, Coach.
Yeah, go.
In basketball, who's the GOAT? This is really big coming from you because you've watched so many players, and
I think the greatest player of all time was Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. I from high school to college to the NBA to being unstoppable the first decade, and then to be a great teammate on the great Laker teams because he didn't have to score 30 every night. I would say Kareem was the best, most skilled basketball player of all time. And then if you want to argue that Michael Jordan and LeBron's longevity speaks for itself.
Yep.
To be great coming out of high school from nearly day one, but certainly his rookie year to now. And then what Michael Jordan did, greatest winner of all time in basketball. If you made me choose between the three, I would say Michael Jordan, but I certainly could make an argument for the other two. And you could throw Wilt in there, Russell as a great winner. But
it's a hard question.
It's a great question. And I never take anybody seriously who argues with me because we don't have the right answer.
That's right.
And I do know a lot about basketball. I don't know everything. I'm learning.
I would take your answer over many of my players' answers.
I saw Kareem in his prime, and I saw all the other guys. I didn't see Wilt necessarily and Russell until the end. But if I'm dodging it, I'd say Kareem is the greatest, most skilled basketball player of all time.
Coach, this was awesome. So much fun. I've always appreciated your friendship. I've just really learned so much from you over the years. But to give up 2 hours of your time like this, incredible, humbled by it, Coach.
No, I'm Matt. I've always learned this. When I talk basketball with somebody else like you, I learn too. I get to think about my thoughts, put them in a cogent form. They're not necessarily correct, but it gets me thinking about what I believe.
Yep.
And then oftentimes I say things, I go, do I still believe that? And that's coaching, evolving. And I've evolved incredibly. And to be able to do this with you, who I've always admired, your book was phenomenal. Leftovers, let's give it a plug. It's unbelievable. The things that, to see you grow as a human being and as a coach too is cool. And I'm glad I spent these 2 hours with you.
Thanks so much for your time, Coach.
Got it.
Thank you for checking out today's episode. Please take a moment to subscribe to this podcast, share it with your fellow coaches, and find us on social media for what's coming up next on the Jamodi podcast. It's just a matter of doing it.